actually spent some time, probably about 2 hours this morning, watching a little bit of highlight films from several of the top-ranked prospects, and actually guys that maybe I did not watch any Ashton Genty. I saw a ton of him. It wasn't a protest in any way, shape, or form. I may eventually get to him, but I watched Mikael Williams, the pass rusher from.
He's
from Georgia.
Georgia, yeah.
And I believe that's the guy that Mel Kiper has mocked to the Bears at 10. I watched the 3 offensive linemen, Banks Jr., Campbell, and Membou. I also watched Tyler Warren, the tight end out of Penn State. So I spent a lot of time watching a lot of the different guys. I'm just I know you've been busy with baseball. I'm somebody that believes that this team, despite having focused a lot of their attention and a lot of their assets on the line of scrimmage on both the offensive line and the defensive line. Obviously, they traded for Joe Tooney. They signed Drew Dahlman, the center who previously played at Atlanta. They traded for Jonah Jackson. On the defensive side, they added Grady Jarrett and Dayo Adengbo. So they've put a lot of their resources into being better at the line of scrimmage. I still am an advocate of them focusing on both sides of the football in the trenches.
Yeah, and at this point, probably more defensive line than offensive. Edge rusher, that's the thing missing to pair with Sweat, right?
Yes.
Now that they've addressed the offensive line.
Adengbo, they gave some significant money to. They gave him $32 million guaranteed for a guy who I believe has 16 and a half career sacks in 4 years. They obviously believe that his potential is there. He fits Dennis Allen's kind of prototype, and they feel his best football is ahead for him. I think the fellows behind the glass are much more tuned into the college game than I am. I believe this draft is very heavy on the defensive line. There are a lot of difference makers, both inside and on the edge. I also watched Mason Graham. I forgot to say that as well today. I watched him first. I'm an advocate. I know some have mocked Ashton Genty going to the Bears if he's there at 10. Many people believe, I would think most think that he'll be gone.
They've both mocked it and mocked it.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I know Sylvie is against it.
I wouldn't listen, it's not the route I would go because, again, as I mentioned, I would like them to focus on the offensive and defensive line despite the upgrades that they've made. You can always use more depth, and you can always use players that will take over for, veteran players sooner rather than later. But I will say, if Ben Johnson decides that Ashton Genty is his guy at 10, if Genty's there, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to turn in my fan club card. It's not what I would do, but I'm going to ride with Ben Johnson.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. We did a segment on overreacting to Cub thoughts. Is this an overreaction, taking Genty?
I think what it is, Jess, is it's a luxury pick.
But so let me finish the thought then, because wasn't Torrey Taylor in the 4th round a luxury? Is it the running back version of Torrey Taylor in the 4th round?
I actually called the Torrey Taylor pick with a 4th round selection an arrogant pick. And it wasn't a personal shot at Ryan Poles or Ian Cunningham. My reference was that's the type of chesty or ballsy pick that you make when you feel your roster's pretty much complete.
Right.
I just would never spend a 4th round pick on a punter or a kicker.
But isn't that the same theory on Genty?
There's a difference between a punter and a running back.
Right. But is there also a difference between the 1st round and the 4th round?
I don't believe that.
I'm trying to make the comparison.
I don't think that's an arrogant pick. I think that's a luxury pick because Genty's going to touch the ball 300 plus times for you.
Doubt. And I'm not on record. I'll make on record now. We'll all enjoy it. But not at the expense of we can't rush the passer or we can't block on the left side. Yeah. But we'll all enjoy Genty. He's talented.
Yes, but I think that, and again, another factor here for me and how I feel about it is this is supposed to be a historically deep draft at running back as well. So you should be able to find somebody that can play at a pretty high level without using the 10th overall pick on that guy. You've got 39 and 41 in the 2nd round. You don't have a 3rd round pick, right, guys? You do have a 4th round pick currently.
The two guys, and I have a 3rd name as well. It's funny you watch tape on Williams, Mikael Williams, because that's someone I was looking at for the Bears at 10, along with
Not just you. There was also Mel
right.
Kiper was looking at him.
Well, and by the way, the Bears do have a third-round pick.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
And
they have 72.
Okay, so did they have a fourth? They
don't have a fourth.
That's what it is. I'm
you
sorry.
know what's funny is Kuiper's first, not first, one of, I don't know if it was his first, back in January, Kuiper's mock draft had the Bears taking Will Campbell, which is still in play. So Campbell, Mikael Williams, is it crazy? What about Jalen Walker? Can you get him? Would you have interest in him?
In the latest drafts I've seen, Jalen Walker's gone before the Bears at 10. Is that correct for most guys? I think Daniel Jeremiah.
There's like a tier of pass rushers that seem to be going anywhere from like 7 to almost 20 sometimes. With like you throw Shamar Stewart in that mix too.
Well, I'd also tell you this too, Jalen Walker. Like when we talk about the measurables,
6'1", 240.
Yes,
he is exactly the same size, or he's listed as the same size as Hassan Reddick. Not saying that those guys, because Hassan Reddick has had a very good career. Dennis Allen's prototype is more of a 6'5", 275-pound or 265-pound edge guy. Now, the kid they signed out of Indianapolis has more weight on him, but he's also somebody that can kick inside. I think that Dennis Allen's prototype for a pass rusher isn't 6'1" and 240. So that's why I went away from it. It's why I really didn't even look at him yet. I'm sure I will look at some of the film on him eventually, but it's why I looked at Mikael Williams.
Well, so tell me about him. Is he?
Well, I mean, this again. I will say this too as a disclaimer. I can watch receivers and feel 95% comfortable that I have a really good feel as to what I'm watching. I can't say that about defensive ends, defensive tackles, or offensive linemen. I would certainly defer to the good kid, Yerk, for all of that information. I can tell you what I saw and kind of what stood out to me. The first guy I watched was Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan. And I know the knock on him, at least recently, has been that he was listed as 320 all season long and weighed at the combine, 290 guys, 295, or maybe even a little lighter than that. He may not be the biggest guy in the world, but he is quick. And again, this is repetitive for people who I know who watch college football a ton.
Yeah, for sure.
But the first time I really focused on guys, he uses his hands exceptionally well. It plays with great feel. Like he was really, when you focus in on the Michigan defense, you see a lot of guys, but when you focus in on one player, he's a really impressive player. I'd be very surprised if he was available at 10.
Yeah, unless you trade it up, I don't think you're getting him.
If he is, you run that card to the desk.
And you put him in the middle with Billings?
Yes. You and Grady Jarrett. And look, again, this is another example, Jess, where if you have a guy who's that talented and he's still there at 10, I mean, you're going to rotate. Look at what the Eagles did. The Eagles mauled you at the line of scrimmage.
I just don't think he will be. Every mock draft I've seen, he's gone.
I'm with you there. Williams is a guy that I didn't think played nearly as athletic as some had advertised him to be, and I think he ran a less than impressive 40-yard dash at his pro day most recently. He's more the prototype of the players that Dennis Allen would look for as edge rushers.
That's why
I don't know how you guys felt. You guys, again, watch more college football than I did.
There's a lot of differing views on him, Williams.
Yeah,
that's why I was interested to see what
I thought he was
thought.
a good player, but I didn't think, guys, that he popped off the screen consistently watching him play. Certainly, I can't tell you 100% that I know exactly what I'm looking at, but he was not a top. He wasn't number 10 worthy from my perspective.
I've made the Nolan Smith comparison before.
Yeah.
That's really only, if you look at their measurables, Nolan Smith is shorter, he weighs less, and he ran like a 4.39. Mikael Williams is not that. He's whatever. He's the Dennis Allen version of whatever that is. But the big thing is with these Georgia guys, a lot of them just don't show up, so you're kind of having to...
Because they're in a rotation.
Yeah, so you're kind of having to project a lot. You look at Trevon Walker, who was taken ahead of Aiden Hutchinson a few years ago. That was solely projection, and that kind of turned out to burn the Jaguars a little bit. He's a good player, but when you draft somebody first overall, you expect that guy to be 14, 15 sacks a year. But I think worked out well for the Eagles though at the end of the first round.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Daniel Jeremiah or it was Mel's mock. I'd have to look, but one of them has the kid that you mentioned from Georgia going to the Jags.
Jalen Walker?
Yes. I'm not sure if it was Mel or it was Jeremiah, but that seemed a little odd because they've got two guys on the edge in Jacksonville that actually have been paid or will be paid.
And they've got no guys standing in front
On their
of Trevor
offensive
Lawrence.
line. Yeah, which was a little bit crazy. So anyway, Williams is a guy that Mel has mocked to them. Look, he may turn out to be the second coming of Micah Parsons. I don't know. I just didn't think that it was somebody that John. The guy I told Tyler, I actually sent you a text today. There were two guys. Mason Graham, the kid from Michigan, looked like a different guy to me. It was, a difference maker. The offensive tackle from Missouri, Membou.
I'm glad you like him. I like him a lot too.
Definitely the most, because I watched all three. I watched Membou, I watched Banks Jr., and I watched Campbell. Membou was definitely the most athletic of the three. I believe he's the youngest, right?
He's 20.
He's got the best measurables, arm size, the length, whatever. He ran a 4.9. No offensive lineman's going to run a 40-yard dash that's meaningful, whatever. I believe he was at the top of the list with bench press as well. I think he did 31 reps, so he's strong as well. I mean, I would definitely, I would defer to Yerk or to text Olin and say, hey, what do you think about this kid? He definitely probably has to be technique wise worked on. The one thing about him is he played every snap at right tackle that I saw. But of the three tackles that many have talked about being first round worthy, he was by far, in my opinion, the guy that stood out the most. And Mel has him going 11 to San Francisco. I saw Daniel Jeremiah has the Bears on his latest mock taking Campbell.
Yeah.
But that's in his draft as well. Membou goes to the Jets at 7.
And remember, I just said Mel had in January the Bears taking Campbell. So they're right in the mix there.
I would say, Jess, if Membou was there at 10,
take him.
And again, before I would sign that in blood, I would talk to some friends of offense. I'd talk to Tom Thayer and have him look at the offensive, his tackle and see what Tom says. Maybe I should text Tom right now, but that kid to me looked like a kid that had maybe the most upside. Maybe Tom would tell me that technically, he would choose somebody else. But that at 10, if that kid's available, I would be really excited, even if you felt like they needed another pass rusher. Because, again, you still have 39 and 41. You could still address that position because it's a deep draft. But that kid would excite me if you could find him. Again, played exclusively at right tackle from what I saw. Don't know if he...
Well, I like where you're going with it because why not turn a weakness into an incredible strength?
No doubt.
If Braxton Jones is a backup, fine. Maybe there's just great competition there. Get another lineman and turn a weakness into a strength.
Because both Banks and Campbell played left tackle.
And I think I said this when I was on mid-year at some point. Like, I don't remember a year where I noticed offensive line play on other teams as much as this year.
Yeah.
You kept saying it to me, like Detroit's offensive line, Washington offensive line. I mean, there's,
Well, there's a reason why what they're doing in other spots works well. It's because you're not really worried about what's happening up front. That's the one position. I think there was a great clip from Harbaugh talking from months and months ago. I don't know, maybe it was at the combine recently or it was from last year. He said, look, it's the one position that every other position group is dependent upon on the offense.
For sure. And, the difference between what the Bears had and what those elite teams had is like night and day. And I was one that thought it would be okay, so I was wrong. It wasn't okay. It went backwards from 23 to 24.
Yeah.
It was better in 23, their offensive line. It was worse in 24.
Yeah.
So I like where you're going with this and just turn it into a strength.
See,
and
that's
have
why
competition
I like
at least one tackle, if not both.
I don't know what they're feeling up there, but if you could find someone like Membou, or maybe they feel like Campbell is the guy.
Maybe, right.
Or they feel strongly about one of the pass rushers, or Mason Graham drops you, whatever the case may be. I just think there is too much value at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football to use that 10th pick on a running back. Or even the tight end. I watched Tyler Warren. He's a really good football player, and a lot of the tape I saw, he's a man against boys. Just bigger, stronger. I've always said, though, Jess, he's another, to me, would be a luxury pick at 10 like Ashton Genty. He is like Cole Kmet. He's the same type of inline Y, I think he is. I mean, he split out and did some other things, but that it's at the collegiate level. If you look at his measurables and you compare them to Cole's a better athlete. Cole ran a faster 40 at the combine. He's got bigger hands. He's got a larger wingspan. He got a better broad jump. Like Cole as an athlete, as an inline Y, has better measurables than Tyler Warren does. So Tyler Warren, in my opinion, isn't coming into your organization and providing you what George Kittle does or what the kid in Arizona does, more of these like Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is more of a wide receiver in a tight end's body. I don't see that in Warren. Yeah. Some may. He's a really good player, but I wouldn't go tight end or running back at 10. It was reassuring to me to see some of the things that I saw, that at 10, you're going to find somebody that can play on the line of scrimmage on either side of the football that I think is more important to you than a backer.
Let me ask you a quick question on Membou, though, because you brought up right tackle, and I just checked his PFF stuff. He never played a single snap at left tackle throughout his collegiate career.
That is definitely an issue. I'd something, again, like I'd have to, you have a conversation with Thayer and see what he thinks.
Yeah, like what would you do in terms of?
I think it's harder.
Darnell?
I think it's harder to first of all. I think it's harder to go from. I think it's harder, first of all, to go from guard to tackle. If you're making that transition, it's easier to go from tackle to guard, but it's probably harder to even go from right tackle to left tackle than it would be tackle to guard. I mean,
do you just kind of redshirt him in year one, let Braxton play left tackle in year one? He learns the position for a year, and then, all right, let's see what you have in year two. And
I would be I'd be totally cool with that.
I don't know. In that scenario, I'd rather draft a pass rusher and have him play right away.
But that means you're comfortable paying Braxton Jones.
Or,
I mean, we just saw the market. Like,
or I would draft Will Campbell and have him compete for left tackle right
whoever
away.
They draft, if they use the 10th pick on an offensive tackle, that guy, in my opinion, is competing with Braxton Jones to start at left tackle.
Or maybe like you just like him, but you project it out really well, but he just needs a little more time in the oven.
My 10th pick has to start.
Give yourself flexibility.
My 10th pick has to start on this team if it's in the trenches.
Well, but I'll ask you this. You just gave $32 million, or $48 million,
right.
$32 million guaranteed to the kid from Indianapolis.
Right.
You're going to sit him? Is he going to start? Now, you're going to have a rotation.
Right.
That is more of a thing on the defensive line. You're not rotating offensive linemen, but on the defensive side, that guy's not going to play every snap either if you draft him at 10 because you gave a ton of money to this kid from Indy. So, and you've got, they like Hardy, your buddy from high school, Charlie. They like Booker. I mean, again,
I did like Booker last year.
I'm not going
potentials.
To. If they use the pick on an offensive tackle or a defensive, lineman, I'm going to be happier with that than I would with them using that pick on a luxury position.
I think we're in agreement. As much as I enjoy Genty, I'm in agreement with you. I think one of the lines, again, has to be addressed, either offense or defense.
I guess to summarize, it's the first time I've really looked at the film, and I will look at a ton more before we get to the draft. But it kind of reinforced my thought that, you can find some value and guys that are filling roles in the most important aspects of what you really need right now.
Yep.
So, my opinion hasn't changed. They still need to focus on the line of scrimmage.